Anyway, a warm welcome. Okay, Anita just asked us to present first of all ourselves, and then talk a little bit about what's going on with our program and with our projects. And so please allow me just to start at first to present those who are present. And I would like to start with our president, with our chair, with Dr. Anita Abbott. You can see on the screen top center. And I think we have a lot of, let's say, good luck and chance to have Anita as our chair, because she manages always to identify absolutely interesting people like you, to invite them and to encourage them to work with us and to put forward their expertise. And we have had excellent examples concerning numerous subjects. So Anita, thank you for that. And then we are supported by Chizzy technically, as usually. Chizzy is the one who makes this show running. And Chizzy, thanks again. This is without your support, this wouldn't be able to conduct such video conferences. And great job. Thank you. Top right, at least on my screen, is Sergeant Major Anthony Spadaro. He used to be, until last year, one of the top senior U.S. Marines leaders, a command senior enlisted leader working for Indo-Pacific Command, originally PACOM, now Indo-PACOM, covering the largest, let's say, geographical area with, well, many nations attached, and numerous people. And I think he brings in big expertise concerning the Indo-Pacific, and not only the military, but also, let's say, the non-military aspects in terms of security, defense, deterrence, and also resilience, if I may take this word already now. You might be familiar with me. I spent a couple of years in the German army, had numerous appointments in Europe and abroad, have some operational expertise, especially Afghanistan, Balkans, and some experience in African nations. I retired last year as Sergeant Major Anthony did in autumn. And I'm now, I feel very happy and honored to work or to support APSI projects a little bit, because I'm a member, as Sergeant Major Anthony Spadaro is, of the Board of Advisors and the Board of Directors for our subordinated Center of Excellence. We cannot see Brad Murphy. He is one of our strongest supporters and co-workers, so he is the one who is responsible for media affairs, for publications, but also for keeping contact with our invited guests. So he is really of absolute importance for us, for all of us. Brad, if you can hear me, thank you again for attending and for your continued support. And then we have you too. We have Roger Baker sitting in Austin, Texas. So we have two Texan gentlemen, because Paul, you are in Texas too. So thank you for attending. That's for the first round. That's all from me, and I give the floor to Anita or to Sergeant Major. One of you, please continue concerning probably what is APSI, what are we doing, and our mission and stuff like that. Please.
Possibly Sergeant Major can start with
Remember that the thing is, when you get a sergeant major to speak, you're all in trouble. So I hope you all have some coffee. You got some nappy blankets. You're ready to sit there for a little bit. Bad move, Anita. No.
Yeah, I'm
Thanks,
sorry.
Anita.
No, I mean, how could you cover it from the general anyway? And I've learned that's my greatest teammate now is General Hageman. You know, aloha to you both gentlemen, you know, from the APSI Forum and Center of Excellence. And we are just, I mean, the general and I were on beforehand and we were like, wow. Of course, we checked out the bios. We saw what you're about and we're like, wow, completely just gobsmacked of what you all are doing now, especially what you're promoting. And why does that really matter to the lines of effort that we're actually doing with APSI right now, and why you're part of this consortium tonight, and we could have a discussion about it. You know, General Hageman's, though, as being Mr. Humility himself, you know, he jokes with me that I only did 35 years, and you know, he has me beat by a couple more years on that one. So here's someone that's, you know, intimately understanding why you're saying, you're going, wow, you have a NATO guy at APSI. And no, it's not a NATO guy. This is a professional military strategist that understands the globe. And that's what we're trying to do with APSI is, even though we call ourselves the Asia Pacific Security Innovation Forum, again, I'm going to put my Indo-PACOM hat on. Well, the Indo-PACOM touches the entire world. And especially if you look from a combatant commander standpoint, every combatant command, it's the only combatant command Indo-PACOM that's touched by every other combatant command. So this is why APSI, when you're seeing it touches the world, everyone's involved with APSI. The Indo-Pacific just happens to be a critical flashpoint. You both all know too well when you're talking about the depth and size of from Bollywood to Hollywood, from polar bears to penguins, when you're just looking at AOR right there, you know, you're talking 36 different nations with 3,000 different languages. I mean, you know the numbers, so I'm not even going to get in the numbers. But just when you look at that population density alone, why is this a critical area to continue to promote the understanding of it? Why do we need to bring experts in right now, especially now? You know, we're doing some damage control in the Indo-Pacific right now to reassure partners and allies that, hey, we were all in this to win this, to, quite frankly, and I like doing self-talk to push back the narrative of the PRC. To let North Korea know that we're serious about our partners and allies in this volatile region. Remember, and when we say volatile, there's good volatility and there's bad volatility.
Yes.
Let's talk about the good volatility. I mean, when you talk about this population density, like my old boss, Admiral Harris, used to say, the next Nobel Peace Prize winner is in the Indo-Pacific region if we just foster it correctly. You know, there could be more brilliance fostered from this population density. The volatility, well, the general and I, you know, we all know too well as my battle brother, what we've confronted in the Indo-Pacific region right now, or what could happen. And again, too, this is where, you know, my other boss, Admiral Davidson, you know, I loved his self-talk with this one, and I really liked his line is that, you know, he wants to talk about to win before fighting or to be ready to fight and win. Well, let's concentrate on the win before fighting. And so that's what we're trying to do with APSI, gentlemen. And that's why we're stoked to have your participation. You know, like I said, I'm the one that's stuck in Honolulu. So if you're ever out this way, the invitation to spread aloha is always open to you all. But I do owe my battle brother a trip to Berlin so I could see everything there. So wherever we end up one day, you know, I'm just going to utilize this technology. And again, self-talk matters. So if the PRC is listening, I like to talk bad about them any chance I get. Anita, you let a Sergeant Major talk.
Thank you. Thank you. Don't forget, we have a APSI Center of Excellence. It started in this year, in February. And we have focused on human security in the Asia Pacific region, and we have several projects. And these projects, wow, I cannot believe it, run smoothly. And we have assisted some. Well, how many? Yes, more than 100 people who live under $2 a day in Afghanistan. No, sorry, not in Pakistan, India, Southeast Asia, Mongolia, and I forgot where. But yes, it's been has, and I think we will have a webinar on social innovation later in on the 20th of November.
Yeah.
But for this webinar called Narrative of Resilience, I think we will be talking about this webinar today. Now, I mean, because I think speakers would like to know more about topics, so we will discuss this today. Okay. So the agenda later would be, as usual, we will start with Karakia, and then I think the moderator or facilitator will lead the session. I think General Hagemann will lead the session, I think. Am I correct? Yes. And then the first speaker will speak, and then the next one, the second speakers, and the third speaker. And at the end, usually we will have a question and answer time. And usually, people will write their questions on the chat box here. And the speakers will be able to answer the questions. So the topic, the theme is narrative of resilience, but the speakers will have the freedom to choose their own titles of presentation or topic, as long as it is related to the theme. And then we will identify the title as well, and we will include this in our program. I think that's all from me. Perhaps if you have question and answer, question.
Yeah. If I just may add a couple of words before I give the floor to Paul and to Roger. Well, when we talk about resilience, we must understand that we had a couple of, let's say, events prior to the November event, of course, and also one dealing with gray zone aggression and hybrid warfare. And one of the speakers was, I think, the well-known Professor Sashadov Nachman, originally from Germany, now based in Australia in Canberra University. And he gave us some insight in gray zone aggression, and also made us understood what is the difference between gray zone aggression, hybrid warfare, kinetic warfare, to know more and to understand better, as I used to say. So this is a little bit the background, and the background in this area, in the Indo-Pacific, is of course linked to China, to the People's Republic of China, and no reason why we shouldn't express this by name. The regime in Beijing plays a specific role, and you might know much more about that than I know, but it affects us all, regardless where we sit on the globe. So it affects Europe, it affects the United States, South America, Africa, everywhere. And China plays a role, and we are quite familiar with in terms of Belt and Road Initiative, in terms of, let's say, financing certain projects in numerous countries, and with the contracts which are at least, well, doubtful, we could say. So I think we started during the last 2 years to cover these areas in a quite comprehensive way. So we were not just talking about security and defense in the narrow understanding of the term, but in the wider understanding, in the wider sense. So this opens completely the room for you to present your findings, your ideas, and your recommendations, how we should proceed with security, defense, stability, cooperation, and the entire, let's say, future questions, which are of great importance for all of us. And this everything is linked with global challenges like climate change, like population, like migration, and all that. So nothing is isolated, nothing works for itself. Everything is interconnected, and this makes things pretty difficult. And we try to find out a little bit how to move forward, how to advise our politicians, how to advise our let's say responsible folks also in private companies, and this is why we need, as I said earlier, to know more and to understand better. Okay, thank you for your patience. And I would like to give the floor to Paul, because you are the first on the screen, or at least on my screen. Paul, the floor is yours, please. Now, please activate your mic. Paul, activate your mic, please.
Still on mute.
There
we go.
Now I can see and talk to everybody. Well, I just have a real quick question first. How long do you want us to talk for in our presentation before I talk? Is it 30 minutes or 20 minutes or so, or what do you prefer? No, I mean, I don't mean for tonight. I mean for the...
No. 20 is ideal, just because if we've always been getting so many questions that are coming from the crowd, and we really want to do due diligence that everyone could get their question, almost everyone answered. So that's why we notice when we get to that 30-minute mark, we're losing, because we're kind of compressed if we're trying to do a 2-hour time frame. It depends on, I guess it really depends, Anita, too, how long do you want this one to go for? So it's time dependent.
Usually for a webinar, we will need up to 2 hours, because we will publish it in postcard, as podcast, and usually 2 hours max.
So 30 might work too. So just building that question and answer period, because we've had so many people come in on these, and when you're having 54 people plus come in, the questions are coming out fast and furious. We really want to make sure we answer the questions.
Well, that helps me a lot, because if we're going to talk about narratives of resilience, I think first we need to talk a little bit for a few minutes about narrative itself, because I find there's a great deal of misunderstanding about what narrative really is. And it's one of those words that I used all the time, not knowing what I was using it about, until I started doing it, and then I started getting involved with the academic side of it. So now the understanding of narrative has made it more of an imperative to pass on that knowledge, because that is the core of all influence. And what General Hagemann is talking about, this being global, and Sergeant Major talking about being global, everything that China is doing is exclusively global. And even though we can't reach their audience, we can reach the rest of the world. So I will say this up front, that I need to give about 5 minutes or so to what narrative really is. But I also need to tell you that my pitch would be something along the line of, you can't have a good defensive, resilient position without having an offense. And that offense is, first of all, must be ethical, but it also must bind together the nations and the entities that are working so hard to bring China into the world as a partner that's ethical. And that behavior modification is absolutely possible, and we can see that in the last 6 months with the change of administrations here. And I don't mean that in any political way. It's just that now that China sees that we are in unity with all the entities in South Asia, Southeast Asia, Central Asia, and that we're standing up against the three evils of the BRI, which are predatory economics, military intimidation, and human rights abuse, they see that they can't get away with that when the world is unified against them. Now, do we need China? Of course we do. We have the rest of the world has somewhat of a symbiotic relationship with China. So I would like to talk a little bit about that just briefly. But what y'all are talking about, having a question and answer period, is essential. And I find that is the best. I think that's where people learn the most. Just hit them with a few of the details, get them established on the same foundation that the rest of us are on, and then answer their questions. So I would recommend, at least for my position, to talk a little bit about what narrative is, talk about that counter narratives don't work in the absence of your own offensive narrative. And everything's about ethics. So it'll be ethical narratives either way. And talk a little bit about what China's doing. And I just, believe it or not, I just talked to a giant university in Buenos Aires about 2 weeks ago about the same subject in Latin America, about the threat of China in Central and South America, not just to the US, but to everybody that does business with Central and South America and all the transportation entities, the infrastructure, ports, railroads, education, everything. So I know I'm throwing a lot at you very quickly. So just like to focus on talking a little bit about narratives, a little about a way to go about it offensively and defensively and ethically, and a little bit about China's narrative. I don't know if any of you have seen a paper I just wrote about a year ago about the narrative Chinese ascension. It touches on all these subjects. And I would gladly just send it. It's public, in the public domain anyway. Y'all are welcome to it. And I'm trying to finish, time provided, the paper I just presented to South America a couple weeks ago, because it's the follow-on to that. And you guys could just have it for whatever your needs are. But it explains my position on narrative in China. But I think it's brilliant to talk about. I think the topic and the theme of your event, this event, is remarkable, because it's really about bringing the world together on an ethical basis to do the right thing, to put the bad actors in their place. So the only thing that could do that is narrative, because all influence is narrative centric, and you can't get there without understanding narrative. So did I talk too fast or too off tangent? It's late here, so my brain's buzzing in different directions. I'm just jealous of being in Berlin or Queensland or in Germany or Berlin. By the way, I've never been to Berlin, so I'm going to invite myself, Hans. Anyway, how else can I help? Is there anything you need to know explicitly from me about how I can help better? That was just my idea of what to talk about.
Well, this sounds perfect. Thank you for that. And this is an excellent approach. And no, I think I do not have, or we do not have additional requests for the time being. Do not be surprised when we have our webinar. As Sergeant Major said already, our attendees are usually quite active. They have questions, and we ask them to put them into the chat function. And not to talk, because this is technically a nightmare. If people all start to talk at the same time, you don't understand one word. So they put the questions into the chat function, and the questions or the remarks or short comments, they are usually or they cover a wide area of subjects, and people are usually quite active. So don't be surprised. If you use one example concerning, let's say, Chinese investments in infrastructure abroad, that some people might have their own or their own proper experience, and they can show up with examples, as I saw in Djibouti, for example. So this is one of the, well, let's say, great investment examples the Chinese put forward. Unfortunately, Europe and especially Germany was not in a position to repair and to restore this railroad line from Djibouti harbor to Addis Ababa. So this was really big mistake, a political, a strategic mistake, not to do this. And I strongly recommended that, but they didn't. Well, okay, it was not top on the agenda at that time. Okay, but so don't be surprised. And if you don't mind, Anita, gentlemen, I give the floor to Roger, and ask Roger what his feeling is and what he intends to do, having heard what we said. Roger, please.
Sure. So just to put what I do in a little context, I don't usually deal with policy prescription. We have built a reputation over almost 25 years of not being policy drivers directly. And it allows us a little bit of flexibility. So I may not be pushing policy ideas in here, but I do have a couple of thoughts on this. I don't approach this. Also, I don't approach this from academia. I come from, again, a different application. We're in the space of, despite me saying I don't do policy prescription, of providing geopolitical intelligence analysis and scenarios and such for corporations, for governments, for NGOs, things of that sort. So I approach this a little differently. I think for me, one of the things would be to put into context the way in which the structure of the international system has evolved. There is a lot of discussion these days that seems to try to force an analogy to the US-Soviet Cold War period. And it's a very different structure that whatever forms of partnerships and relationships are going to be taking place are going to be in. We don't see a bipolar world. We see a multipolar world system. We see a system where there's not perfect alignment between the US and the Europeans, or quite frankly, between the Russians and the Chinese. We see a world where there's a lot of increasing agency for the middle powers. And that means that they're not necessarily playing 100% in one camp or in the other camp. And that becomes an important part of thinking about how to manage relationships in this new world, because they're not going to be those hard, multifaceted, complete relationships that we may have pretended or wished we had seen in the Cold War. If you look back, they probably weren't nearly as quite as concise as our collective memory makes them out to be now. But I think for me, that would be my initial way to approach it, is to try to reframe how we see multipolarity, what that does in regards to the difference in the way people need to approach the concepts of partnerships and alliances. It may not even be alliances, it's more about partnerships. And that idea of fluidity and flexibility in those relationships by necessity almost, because of the way these countries are going to be interacting. And you can see hints of that thinking in some of the discourse coming out of the US administration, where they talk about we won't make people choose sides or things of that sort. But clearly the secondary piece of that is, as you look at geoeconomic tools, regulatory adjustments in standards and norms, in access to or countering access to certain technologies or certain corporations, it does start to put some very significant stress on the countries that are caught in between these big powers. And being able to recognize that stress is going to be critical as the large powers try to position themselves, and even quite frankly, as the middle powers position themselves within that global balance. So that would be my suggestion for what I would approach it from, if that works.
Man, yeah. I mean, you're taking us to school right there, especially, I like the both approaches. So one, we're going to attack, I like this behavior modification of ethics. So really, Paul, I think it would really play for you if we were doing like a lineup, you to go first. and then Roger, you kind of come in there because I like where you're going to talk about middle powers. And I think that's the criticality where a lot of people don't understand this key role of who are the middle powers. And let's actually pronounce who these middle powers that are literally, to talk like a Marine right now, sorry, they're caught between the and the stink right now. If you're talking about middle power, I mean, if you're really talking about who are these middle powers that are really stuck, I'm not talking Sri Lanka, that literally abdicated everything to the PRC. But when you start talking about others, look at all the small Pacific Island nations right now that are under what? The old conundrum is, the U.S. comes in and builds a school, China comes in and builds a casino. Who's going to win? And who's going to sit there? You could espouse freedom so much. You could get on the bully pulpit of this is what's right. But a casino, which is actually a listening post, but it's also, though, a moneymaker. And then that's, like I said, this middle power, I think what we're trying to, and with Anita's blessing, and I'm sure the general, if you understand this is what we're trying to influence here is why do you want to, not asking you to pick sides, but to how to pick sides judiciously, a discerning way to pick a side. Thoughts? I mean, General? I mean, I don't know. I hope I'm on.
Fully agreed. And I strongly advocate the approach, Roger, that you said we are talking about a multipolar world. And if we take, let's say, key powers and middle powers, we must illustrate that there's a huge diversity. In former times, we used to have the East, the West, and the non-aligned movement. And the non-aligned movement, under the leadership of originally India and then later followed by Brazil, South Africa, was, let's say, a bloc as such, a third bloc, we could call it. This is history. This is gone. And if we are able to make the audience understand, well, at least they know a little bit about that because usually they are familiar with the subject. But we should make them understand the times of a clear delineation in 1, 2, or 3 is over. And within the group of middle powers, if we can even talk about a group as such, there is such a diversity and a variety and different interests that it is, let's say, we already use the word volatile. So it's probably not volatile, but it's a changing environment. It's an ever-changing environment, obviously. And we have new alliances and new partnerships, and things are changing. Dependencies are growing, and they are diminishing. And it is really so. It is, yeah. Everything's blurry.
I mean, nature abhors a vacuum.
Yeah, indeed. So this sounds like really an excellent plan to go forward. I think what I recommend, Anita, I don't know what's your opinion on that, is that we try to take advantage of kind of webinars like that and to put it into writing at least the key messages to not only to have a record with our machine, but also to have something we can read later and people can read later, that would be very helpful. I don't know what you think about that, because it's additional work, I know, and the workload is already quite high. But I think this would be useful.
Yeah, certainly. Podcasting is the starting point. And because it is easier to do podcasts, within a week, we can publish it. Whereas if we put them in writing, it will take longer. But certainly in the future, we need to do that. About this webinar, when I selected this theme, there are reasons why I think it is necessary to be included, because resiliency is a core concept or aspect of cooperative security. and collective defense. And I thought, oh, it is necessary to be included in one of our webinars. And simply because resiliency is the ability to be, the ability to evolve or adapt in hard circumstances. And we have experienced difficult circumstances. That's why I thought this is crucial. This theme is necessary to be included in one of our webinars. And yeah, we are grateful that both of you have this kind of approaches, and I think your approaches are necessary to be included. Yeah, thank you.
If I may add something again, sorry, we talked about earlier. We talked about individual and societal resilience, and given the influence machines of the social media today, which offer just a platform for disinformation, for fake news, for rumors, for everything, we must think about the two levels, at least two levels. There are many more probably, I don't know it. You are the experts. But at least two levels, individual and societal resilience. So we have to withstand, let's say, attempts to feed us with fake news. We have to talk also about the role of social media. And just one example, without talking about politics, but just one example. There was a decision of one single individual to cut off the Twitter channel of President Trump. One single individual decided to shut down this channel, and he was able to silence one very important person from one day to the next. The democratic institutions, elected individuals, the parliament, the Congress, all those were not able to do that. They were not allowed to do that. So who controls all these social media companies? Who makes, who guarantees that ethics, democratic standards, pluralism, freedom of speech, and all that will be, let's say, will be preserved, will be guaranteed also in future? Next day, this famous gentleman from Twitter might silence me or might silence you. So well, of course, a lot of importance for this world. But this is a question we have to talk about, and that's an issue. And we are talking about democracy, we are talking about pluralism, we are talking about freedom, we are talking about a systemic a challenge between well, let's say China on one hand and the free world on the other hand. But we must be aware of the fact that it affects us all individually. Yeah. Okay.
If you don't mind, to the general's point too. The one thing that's really, I think if you really want to push this is even the narrative right now from Hollywood. And if you want to talk about sequestration of speech, I think the greatest example right now, and I think everyone in here, at the exception of Anita, remembers in the 1980s, there was this very famous movie called Top Gun. And if you remember in Top Gun, he puts on, Maverick puts on that jacket. And on the back of that leather jacket was 4 flags: the US flag, the Japanese flag, the flag of the Republic of China or Taiwan, and the UN flag. If you look at Top Gun that's coming out this year, when Maverick puts on that jacket, supposed to be the same leather jacket, pay attention to the back and look what's eliminated from there. Well, when you have China funding 20% of your movie, yeah, they're going to dictate that you're going to remove 3 of those flags. I mean, that's narratives of if you want to talk ethical modification. Well, let's talk about even the narrative of Hollywood, because that's really, I talk about people now have 240 IQs, meaning 240 characters, and that's about the extent of their IQ. But these are the people that are getting influenced by it.
Mm.
It's, to everybody's point, let's maybe refine it just a little bit, since influence is what I do. Is social media is a powerful medium, but it's a tool. And like newspapers were a tool, like the printing press was a tool, like word of mouth was a tool, storytellers are a tool to deliver. So the nice thing about all these disparate groups that we're talking about, commercial, business, corporations, the military, all these different entities and partnerships, the thread that runs through all of them is a theme of an ethical approach to being a world partner. So that's one of the things we have to address. We have to be very careful not to break things into little sections, because the strength and the power is in the unity aspect when it comes to standing up against some sort of an oppressive government that's literally a threat to the world. Now, does that make the Chinese people bad? No, but they don't have any say in this matter. The CCP has no say in this matter. This is all one guy. When General Hageman talks about the power of one man, we're talking about Xi here. That there's virtually no difference. So the key to all of this, whether it's soft power or hybrid war conflict or gray zone conflict and conflict under the threshold of war, we make up terms all the time. At the end of the day, we're talking about influence. And that is what we need to go on the offense about, from a influence point of view. And that doesn't mean propaganda. That means telling the truth about the values we share. It means telling the truth about the rules that we will abide by and what we will not put up with. And if we do that, we unify. If we pull all those threads together that unify us, that's where the strength to resist China comes from. That is actually the core, not only of success, it's the core of resilience. Every people, every group of people, every nation, every region, they all share layers of identity. And in those layers of identity are what make them strong and resilient. So it's really taking people back to the roots in a kind of a weird sort of a way. Influence is the key here. We need an offense, and we need to get the partners in the world that abide by the rules, the international rule-based order, to go on the offense, influence from an influence perspective, to talk about what's important to the world, not what's important to Xi, not what's important to Putin or the guy in North Korea or any of the other populist movements in the world. We need to talk about the values that impact everyday people, because those values that impact everyday people are the exact layers that unify a nation and what make a nation resilient. Anyway, I got on my soapbox a little bit. I hope that helps.
Brilliant.
Excellent. Roger, please, floor is yours.
I don't need it. I already had it. I think, there's lots of ways to pick at the edges of this, and I think really, as we've heard already in the Q&A is where the real meat comes out, because we can present and introduce thoughts and hopefully get people thinking a little differently or challenge the way they're currently thinking. But then it's how that impacts them and how then they respond to it that really drives the dialogue and drives the value, at least from my experience in the past.
Interesting enough too, due to Anita's grandiose efforts, we have people from Singapore is going to be there, people from the Philippines are going to be there, representatives from Taiwan are going to be there, India is going to be there, and they like to, and General Hageman's going to laugh at this one, but they do like to talk, and their viewpoints are a little. That's why I like they bring this great blend when we have them there, and so we have reps from Indonesia, but really, when you're targeting the ones that are going to be listening there, that are going to hitch up with the questions, that's just a little side intel of who could be there. I think Brett, were you want to say something?
We have guests that are listening in. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Anita, no, anyone?
The consortium will be held on the 13th of December, I think. 13th and the 14th of December. And the consortium is supported by NATO Public Diplomacy Division. And your webinar on the narrative of resilience will be held in November the 15th. And I think we will be including your presentation in the consortium as well. Yeah, I think Tej and Brett are still working on the program, finalizing the program. So actually they know more. They know better than me, Brett and Tej. Yes.
I'm excited.
Okay, thank you for that, Anita. That's good, excellent. So we have quite a series of events in the coming 2 months, which is much appreciated. We cover various subjects. This is very good. I saw Brett. Brett, could you please add a couple of words concerning what we just discussed for our next webinar concerning resilience, please?
Yeah, thank you very much for the floor. Appreciate you being available at short notice, Roger and Paul. Apologies, Sydney could not join us tonight, but she hopefully will join us as well for the resilience narrative of resilience that is coming up, as you can see on the screen there, November 15th, starting 9 a.m. New Zealand time, going for 2 hours. So yeah, you want to be careful. If one or two of us have got caught out by that international dateline, as we're one of the first to see the sun in the world, and you guys follow on. So very convenient in Hawaii because we're pretty much 24 hours apart. So, you know, we're on the same time level, just Back to the Future, literally. So we appreciate, though, I think both of you, it's 11 o'clock in the states that you reside. So yeah, just do check that. But apart from the odd sort of technical issue, generally these things have gone well, and we're just grateful to have you both on. And yeah, we're getting good turnouts. We get politicians locally, and we've had quite a lot of support from there. And we have members, different members of the House. We've obviously had a wide range of academics, and also a lot of the military attaches are based over in our neighbour across the ditch, Australia. So we've had a variety, the Netherlands, Japan. We've got interest from Germany, and obviously we've got an international audience. That's the beautiful thing of technology. Despite the restrictions at the moment, they can come from anywhere on the globe. So yeah, and of course it's all about networking and working together for interest. China has not hidden its goals. It wants to rule the world. It was stated very clearly in a 2005 dossier, and they've been quite bolshy right now. So the only way you can push back is to work collectively together to let the bully know that he can't go any further. Otherwise, just to quote one Jewish professor that was cited earlier, we're already in the 1930s era. Mr. Bachman stated that unapologetically at our last event. So we need to be aware that something needs to be done collectively. Otherwise, we're going to have the same problems. What does it say? Those who forget history are doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past. So yeah, this is why we do what we do, just to work collaboratively and stuff, and try and think strategically to outwit potential future problems, because yeah, we don't want to repeat of what has happened in the previous century, do we? So yeah, but so gentlemen, thank you so much for being here, and yeah, any questions you have, just you can email me anytime, and I'll try and get those answers back to you, and yeah, we'll just move forward from there.
Let me throw a quick question in right now, just on logistics. Is this for the November event? Is that preferably with visuals or just with our pretty heads bobbing along?
Whatever you prefer, sir. I'll let the others answer that question. But if you want to send slides and turn them over, you can. Carmo can turn them over for you if you want to go down that angle. But yeah, we're there obviously to hear your pretty heads and your talking voices, all that intellect you've stored away over the years. So it's just however you want to present.
Okay.
Up to you.
Oh, don't forget to send us your bio and photos, please.
Yeah, that's your second witness.
My intention is not to consume too much time when opening the webinar on November 15. However, we need to inform the audience who you are. So Paul, you sent me already a very limited CV, and I'm glad to have that. I would take this as the masterpiece to present you to the audience. I would like to have a similar approach from you, Roger. And if we have another speaker, Brad, as I understood, Cindy, that would be helpful too. So I will limit my introduction. I will not open, let's say, a broad picture of the world of today, but give the limited time to you, gentlemen, and to Cindy, if she's available. And then later we will try to moderate questions and answers, because you should not, the speakers, you should not concentrate on the chat function. You concentrate on what you are saying, and then we will put forward, let's say, in more or less adequate words, what has been noted in the chat function. And this will be done by me or by Brad or by Sergeant Major or by Anita. And we will play a little bit ping pong at that. And this is usually the best way to handle it. So do not expect too much introduction from my side. That's the time is precious, and we want to hear from you what's going on, and not from me. Okay.
Sorry. We do need to remember that for the podcast, we will need to focus on the content. So we won't have a lot of housekeeping or other than content, because we only have 2 hours, up to 2 hours. And I need to warn you, as the General has mentioned earlier, that there will be a lot of questions. Usually we have a lot of questions, and often we have to combine the questions if we find that the questions are similar. Anyway, yeah, that's all from me. Thank you.
What a great night.
Well, I think we covered the most important questions. Please do not hesitate to get in touch with us if there are additional remarks, questions, or proposals. You're more than welcome in doing so. Well, I think that makes it quite a successful morning for me, early morning, and evening for you. Yeah, it's still dark outside in Berlin, and it's not because I closed everything. No, it's.
Well, actually, it is Wednesday for them now. I mean, I'm still on Tuesday, so if we're going to play Back to the Future, Brett, I mean, they're dealing with Wednesday now. I'm still in Tuesday.
Yeah, so. I've made it to Wednesday, so we're catching up.
Yep. Hey, here we are.
Yeah, I was out your way 2 weeks ago, Sergeant Major. So it's I've been easing my way back through the time zones.
Yeah. Come on back. It's always welcome. This is Aloha. We're going to welcome you. So.
Yeah.
But no, but the gentlemen, seriously, this was awesome, and we really look forward to this participation, and just on the subject matter alone, and that I don't know, there's almost like a synchronicity of the topics without you two even meeting each other now, and I just like how this kind of happens, and that's really what APSI is about. It's a synchronicity of ideas, and it just kind of happens. And that's why we just don't want to be this ordinary one where a bunch of people get there and go, yap, 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 yap. We want a cause and effect relationship. And that's why we're just listening to what you just brought up. We can already see the causal effects happening. So we can't thank you enough. Seriously, thank you.
Well,
Thank
I
you.
can't speak for everyone else, but I will say thank you, and I'm honored to participate amongst the all of you. Always a fan. Nice to meet everyone, and this will be delightful. If you have a chance, when it's available, just to send the order of things and the kind of the organization of it, that would be terrific.
Sure.
Because I'm ADHD almost off the chart, literally. So it takes a little extra work for me to focus. And General Hageman, it's evening here and it's still dark in Texas as well. So I'm having a pint. So cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Okay.
Cheers. I'm jealous, but it's too early for me.
Gosh.
Awesome. Okay.
Combined.
One final remark from my side. I think you talked about unity and things like that. Yes, I fully agree. I think we must support cohesion. This is, let's say, where we used to put some emphasis on. I think this is something the APSI community is used to, because we usually say two things. One is, as I said earlier, know more, understand better. This is a kind of a phrase, and the other is that we underline the necessity and the importance of cohesion throughout our community, our world, and this is a prerequisite to shape the future in our sense, and to keep it as we desire to have it. Okay. Yeah, Anita.
Paul and Roger, just before we sign out, I'm assuming in your time zone right now it's just after midnight, so about 18 hours between us.
Mhm.
Are you both in Texas or different ones
Yes.
stayed over, or
12:06 to be precise.
so? Just to give you a
that
heads up,
said, the time zone, we should have the time change before the meeting in November.
So it'll be 5
Okay.
hours. Well, it'll be 17 hours probably, I think.
okay.
Yeah, indeed. Same applies to me. We will have time change from summertime to winter time, end of October. So there will be an additional time, an additional hour between New Zealand and Europe. I think we will have then 12 hours difference. Exactly.
So Paul and Roger, just off the top of my head, based on that intel, I would suspect that both of you would be delivering around 4 p.m. on the Sunday, the 14th of November, your own time. I'll send that out in an email, but based on the 17-hour times difference, it would be 4 p.m. Sunday, the 14th of November in the Longhorn state of Texas.
It's the Aggie state. Sorry,
I don't
Rob.
know. I'm in Austin, man.
I know.
Oh, no.
I'm married to an Aggie, and all my kids are Aggies, so I gotta say, I have to stay true.
Yeah, Brett, you got to be careful now when you're talking Texas, man. You got to be careful with these guys. You got Aggies.
Oh gosh, I didn't understand the local customs. I've set something off.
Ooh, yeah, they may not talk now. These guys, this is like Hatfields and McCoys. This is north-south. This is North Island, South Island type stuff, boy. You got to be careful.
It was
All
pretty
right.
bad when I was doing a class up at TCU, and they were kicking UT's rear. So
Oh dear. Oh dear.
And the Aggies had a big win this other weekend. So I mean, man, the Aggies are up on the world.
I'm very
again.
proud. Very proud. Actually, I
American
think all
football.
of Texas was proud, even Longhorns, just to beat Alabama.
Yes.
But we're talking around everybody now.
But no. So really for Anita, Brent, and the general. Okay, so this is like you're talking All Blacks here. This is like you're talking. This is Texas. This is like All Blacks territory to y'all, gentlemen. You got to understand rugby diplomacy. If anything I learned my 4 years Indo-PACOM, you better understand rugby diplomacy if you want to get around the Indo-Pacific AOR.
As long as it's not cricket.
oh please, yes.
That's when you go to India. Okay.
Oh no, we're starting a cricket league here in Austin.
Oh dear.
Hey, at least we get 6 runs for a homer, not 1.
Yeah, but a game takes 4 days.
5 days.
This is good. Okay. That now you know the discussion's going well. We diverted to this. So okay. I think this is good night.
I'm indeed grateful
Thank you
for
so
all of
much.
the support.
Okay.
So look forward to seeing you next time.
All right.
Very
Thank you.
much so. Good night, everyone, or good day. Or
Kia ora,
whatever.
aloha, shalom,
Yora,
auf Wiedersehen.
Guten
Good
Tag.
night.
Auf Wiedersehen and have a wonderful time. And glad to see you soon. And Maxwell, I could see you too. Hi,
Hey, there's
Maxwell.
Maxwell.
I'm here. Yeah. Don't go away like that.
There's
Okay,
the wizard. To Paul and Roger, there's the wizard behind the curtain for APSI right there. There he is, right there. There's
I
Maxwell.
depend on wizards.
Excellent.
Take
Okay.
it easy.
So, yep, then we sign out. Have a wonderful time, a wonderful day, wonderful night, whatever, and glad to see you soon again. Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you for attending. That was a real pleasure, and I think it was precious to do it. Okay? Very useful.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.